Butler the rebound. Crystal Dangerfield will take it. Crowd will make some noise here. Saluting this UConn team that has won 99 in a row with the century mark on the line Monday night here against South Carolina.
And I've said this before 100 times. We're going to lose. Could be Monday. Could be next weekend. Could be the following weekend. We're going to lose. It's not if. It's just when. It's not like if. Of course we're going to lose. So more people should start coming to our games because you want to be here when that L comes. You could say, I was there. This place should be packed Monday night. I want to be there. I want to see it. I want to see them lose. I've seen enough of their wins. I want to write a story that says UConn lost.
Hello, Husky fans, and welcome to another episode of the Husky Hoop Scoop. We're here with episode 3, going to be focusing solely on the women's basketball team. What a season they're having. And we are here with a tremendous panel consisting of Daniel Connolly, who is our the UConn blog's lead women's basketball correspondent. Dan, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thanks. Next, we have Irina Nanka, who has been my co-host on the Husky Hoop Scoop. Irina, how's it going?
It's going great. How's everything with you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. And then last but not least, we have Will Richardson, recent UConn graduate, UCTV alumnus, and very, very plugged into the women's basketball team. Also contributes to the UConn blog's coverage of the women's basketball team. Will, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, when we talk about this UConn women's basketball team, it's safe to kind of just say, to start things off, nobody expected that they would be 24-0 at this point in the season. 12-0 through an extremely challenging non-conference slate. So a lot to unpack here, but and Dan, maybe we'll start with you. They had a lot of production that they needed to replace. Obviously, you lose the number 1, 2, and 3 pick in the WNBA draft. Some of the best college basketball players of all time: Breanna Stewart, Morgan Tuck, Moriah Jefferson. In your opinion, Dan, who have been those key players who have stepped up to fill those really huge voids on the team?
Well, they went from having the big three of, like, obviously Stewart, Jefferson, and Tuck, and they turned into what people are now calling the core 4. So it's like Katie Lou Samuelson and Nafisa Collier, who are the sophomores, and then Gabby Williams and Kia Nurse. So those 4, they all kind of have different roles, but those 4 starters are playing the bulk of the minutes. And Sanaya Chong. Sanaya Chong is very underrated in this. Yeah,
I mean, definitely would agree with you that it has been very, very even. Will, I guess when you think about how that's played out in the team, who's been most surprising to you in how much they have stepped up this season?
Well, for me, I would say the consensus would be Katie Lou Samuelson, not necessarily because of what she was expected to be when she got to UConn, but it's the fact that she did it this fast. Her scoring output has just about doubled. I mean, any statistical category you want to look at for Katie Lou has jumped through the roof, averaging 21.5 points, 4 rebounds, shooting 43% from the three-point line. Those type of numbers we expected to see going into her junior year and senior year. That's when it hit for Breanna Stewart. But Katie Lou came out the gate firing, and to piggyback off of Dan a little bit, it seems like each player on this team picks up where the other one lacks a little bit. So if Katie Lou has an off game, Gabby Williams, she's an energizer for the team. If Gabby and Lou are both off, then you have Nafisa, who comes in and gives you the double-double. And if all 3 are off, then people forget about Kia Nurse, who put up 30, I believe, on DePaul.
This is a Connecticut program. There's never really a one-man show around here, and I think even when you have superstars who do come here and take the reins, you still have a lot of supporting roles that do a lot of big things. So today was a great team win, and I think every game this season somebody has stepped up and done what we needed them to do, and I think that's the biggest important thing for us.
And on the defensive side, Sanaya, she has the highest assist to turnover or the lowest assist to turnover ratio in the entire country. So she protects the ball and she anchors that defense for the team.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to single any one or two out, but I do think Samuelson deserves a special mention, and then so does Collier. Collier has arguably been the team's most consistent player all season. Irina, your thoughts on kind of players who have stepped up this season?
Well, this is a team that had no preseason All-Americans, that came in ranked number 3 in the country. And what Katie Lou Samuelson and Gabby Williams in particular have done is show a leadership that we haven't seen in players at such a young age. In their leadership, in their determination, their resilience, they've created better players in Nafisa, in Kia Nurse, in Crystal Dangerfield. They give confidence to everybody on the team.
But I like to think that when you decide you want to come to school here, you have this vision of, wow, this is where I'm going. This is what they've done. These are some of the players that they've had there. And I think thinking that you can just step right in and be one of those people, and then coming here and actually having to be that, are two completely different things.
Looking back, it's obviously insane to think that they were ranked number 3 or number 4, depending on your source, to start the season, and really did have a very challenging open to the season on the road against number 12 Florida State. Very, very tight game. Could have gone either way, and they came out on top. But since then, I mean, take care of Baylor comfortably, take care of Dayton comfortably, DePaul, Texas, Notre Dame, K-State, Ohio State, and then weather a challenge from Maryland on the road. An incredibly impressive slate of out-of-conference wins. Nobody in the AAC is really giving UConn much of a test, and probably won't for a little while. But I want to throw it out to you guys. Obviously, we've got a big game coming up Monday night with South Carolina visiting Gamble. But what has been the most impressive early season non-conference win in your opinion? Let me start with Dan.
I'm going to go with Maryland on this one. Like you said, they weathered that storm, and as that game was coming down to the wire, it kind of felt like UConn was losing their grip on it, and Maryland was just this insurmountable wave, and it kind of started to feel like UConn was going to lose that game. And really, none of the other non-conference games, besides maybe Florida State, that first game, none of those games felt like they had a chance of losing. Like Baylor got close, but it never felt like they were like going to lose that game ever. But with Maryland, it was just incredible how they fought them off. And then, I mean, we're talking about Katie Lou Samuelson. She threw up in the first quarter during that game, and then she put together one of her best performances of the season. I mean, that's just the type of player she is.
Yeah, I mean, that was never going to be an issue, whether or not Lou was going to be able to be someone that you could count on at one end of the floor, especially. You don't have the kind of high school career that she had, and do some of the things she did towards the end of last season if you didn't really believe in yourself and have a certain confidence level, obviously. And she knows she's good. She knows she's good at what she's good at.
Yeah, Samuelson was sick as well on Saturday for a big win against SMU. Still had a very good performance, so arguably maybe a better player when she's sick than not. Will, do you disagree, agree? Do you have a different game that was most impressive to you out of the early season wins?
I think Maryland made the biggest statement, but I'll say the biggest overall impact would be Baylor for me, because I think it was the second game of the year, and oftentimes going back to 2014, the second game of the year was Stanford, and that game started this winning streak that they're on now. And the second game is often important a lot of times because you're looking for teams to build chemistry. You're looking for that on-court dynamic in terms of movement and set pieces on offense and on defense, rotating and things along those lines. And UConn had control pretty much from the midway point in the first quarter all the way to the end. Yes, they were down at the half, but that was due to just shots not falling. But UConn did pretty much everything right in the Baylor game, and they put Baylor away pretty handily, and they won that game by, I believe, 11 or so. So for me, the Baylor game was the most important because once they got over Baylor, no other team roster-wise could compete with Baylor. Baylor had size. Baylor had Nina Davis at the 4 spot. They had so many things to compete with, and they did it in the second game of the season. And to do it as early and the way that they did, to me, set the tone for the Maryland game and Notre Dame games where they were just able to take control from start to finish.
I do agree. It's definitely really, really impressive, and was the kind of the start of that turning point where people are saying like, okay, actually, you know what, the UConn women's basketball team is going to be just fine.
So I think the biggest win for this season for me was Notre Dame. A month into the season, that was on the schedule. Gino put it there for them to face a tough test on the road that he thought that they might lose. He was ready for them to lose that game to show their character. And they showed in that game that they can go on the road and they not only are not vulnerable, but they are better than everybody else that is playing this game right now in a very competitive league. And they dominated. They dominated the second half. They went into Notre Dame. They quieted the arena. They showed their dominance in every part of that game. And from then on, there has been no question that this is the best team in women's college basketball right now. And as part of the historical significance, I feel very comfortable arguing that this is the single most dominant team in the history of any sport.
That's why I get a kick out of when people contact me and tell me, you're not John Wooden and you're not UCLA. And I'm like, you couldn't spell UCLA. You couldn't tell me what UCLA stands for. And I could put you a mile from their campus and you wouldn't know where it was. You've never seen them play back in those days. You don't know anything about their program, who they beat, how they got to the Final Four, how they won championships. You know nothing about them. You just know that I hate women's basketball and you're not UCLA.
This is the best collegiate professional sports franchise in the history of team sports.
When would they lose? I mean, next year they just lose Chong and they return everybody else and add 2 transfers. Dan, do you see this team losing anytime soon?
Well, they're not just adding 2 transfers. They're adding arguably their best player. I mean, Azura Stevens, sorry. She has been compared to Brianna Stewart. She's got the length Stewart has. She kind of plays a similar game. She's a really, really good player. So you're going to add that. And I feel like people are understating Chong's importance a little bit, but you still have Crystal Dangerfield who's coming up. You have that ridiculous recruiting class. I don't see where this team slips up.
Yeah, it really seems like if someone's going to beat UConn anytime soon, it's going to have to be somebody late in the NCAA tournament. Will, you keep pretty close tabs on the rest of the NCAA. I mean, obviously there's always the scenario, right? You go cold shooting, situation where you don't have a deep bench, you get into foul trouble, and anything can happen. But who are the teams you think might be able to pull off the upset on UConn, if at all? Who do you think would be possible in this NCAA tournament?
Honestly, I can't really pick a team. I think if I have to pick, I would say Maryland, just on paper. I mean, between Brianna Jones and Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, and the way that Brenda Fries is able to rally that team together offensively, they put up, I believe, what was it, like close to 80 almost or something like that against UConn. So it's not like it's impossible for UConn to lose. It's just the fact of what it would take for UConn to lose. I think Maryland is probably the closest on paper, but like Dan said, I think this year, just looking at the way that they performed this year, I don't see it.
Yep. Well, we do know that they're going to rip through the rest of AAC play and obviously at Mohegan Sun for the conference tournament do the same. But before that happens, they do have their final kind of big contest of the season. Number 6, South Carolina visiting Gamble Pavilion. Dan, we'll start with you. Thoughts on South Carolina from what you have seen and read and how they might match up with UConn?
Well, we're saying teams that could potentially upset them, and this team should scare you a little bit. I mean, they're 2 two of their best players, former #1 recruit Asia Wilson, and then they've also got Elena Coates, who's averaging a double-double and has over 100 more rebounds than everyone else on her than the next highest on her team.
They're a problem for everybody they play. You could say, well, you can do this against them or you can do that against them. The bottom line is those two are really, really hard to play against. There's not very many teams in the country that have two players like that you have to deal with. I wasn't worried about it last year with Stewie and Tuck. I'm worried about it now.
Thoughts on the matchup?
I think I was looking at the height of South Carolina's roster to go off of Dan's point. Asia Wilson 6'5", Elena Coates is 6'4". They have two players at 6'2", a player that's 6 feet even, two players that are 6 feet even. Then you go 5'10", 5'8", 5'7", and two players at 5'6". That's really scary because, like Dan said, Natalie Butler is a niche player. Gabby Williams goes for the tip. She's 5'10", 5'11". So if you're looking at in terms of matchups, in terms of just inside out, South Carolina's going to have the easy advantage on paper. But what plagued UConn and what plagued Baylor in that game was the fact that they did get into foul trouble as well. But Gabby Williams was able to lock up their four, and she was able to match up evenly. If you take the game and move it from the inside out and make South Carolina have to shoot the ball, UConn's going to have the advantage hands down because they rotate on everything. Their defenders move around from place to place, and it makes it really easy for Gabby to just dominate that paint. So for me, the one matchup I'm looking forward to the most is the guard play. I think if Kia Nurse can set up the point guard spot from the jump, UConn has a clear advantage for the whole game.
Irina, anything you'd like to add?
I think that what's special about this team, too, is that the UConn team are excellent passers this year. They're very, very good with that. That's a strength of theirs. And these girls are very fast. And I think that if they're able to stay out of foul trouble and pass as efficiently as they have been this season, and obviously offensively have a phenomenal game, there's no reason they should lose.
Yeah, and I think, going back to that point overall about kind of the athletes that they are, that's where Gabby Williams really shines. I mean, it is so clear when you see her play on the court. We got to give her some special props. It is so clear when she's on the court that there's this very, very special athlete that the Huskies have, who Gino Auriemma has taught and coached up to play very, very disciplined and useful basketball. I mean, we really haven't seen anyone kind of stuff the stat sheet the way that she does in a while, I think. I mean, obviously, Stewie put up points. Morgan Tuck did a lot of different things, but the way that Gabby Williams is playing out there is really just it's incredible. I think there's very hard to make reasonable comparisons as to what kind of play we're getting from her because she's just doing so many different things for the Huskies.
Gabby Williams is now the third player in UConn history to record, as of today, I believe, at least 200 rebounds, 100 assists, 50 steals, and 25 blocked shots in a season as of today. And the other two women in that company are Maya Moore and Brianna Stewart. That is elite company that you do not get to unless you are the type of leader that is looking to win 4 championships while you're at UConn.
I mean, she's had the 5th triple-double in team history. Like, Brianna Stewart didn't even do that. I think Dan and I were talking about that on Twitter, is that Brianna Stewart didn't even get a triple-double for everything that Stewart did. Gabby's in a category of her own. I mean, she's 1st in steals and assists, and she's 4th in points. So when you think that she's not going to make a difference in the game, especially like today, where she had 2 fouls in the first quarter, she comes out the game, and immediately as soon as she comes back, the team is totally different. I mean, they went from, I believe, up 7 to up 20 in the second quarter as soon as Gabby came back in. So Gabby matters almost as much, if anybody, to the success of this team moving forward. But that's what I want to see in the South Carolina game. The starters tend to play all 40 minutes or at least 35, 36 minutes. If they can stay out of foul trouble, that will be scary for every other team in the country because that's the one way that you can beat UConn is to get them to foul out and make them mess up on their own. If they don't do that, we can see their streak go to 100, 110, or whatever the number would be by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, they really do rely heavily on that starting five, but can you really blame them? What a starting five that is. I mean, probably 5 of the 10 best players in college basketball right now, maybe 15, players in all of women's college basketball right now. And something that's making them, I think, even more fun to watch than last year's team. Last year's team was just pure, unfiltered dominance, and then this year's team, they're still dominating, but they're doing it in so many different ways. Different people are stepping up. It's so much fun to see the way that they all play together and how they buy into Gino's system.
This is a place where you can get a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans to play unselfish basketball. And, that's something special. It's a testament to what Coach Ariam and Coach Dilly have done around here.
I'm not going to lie. I think this is going to be a really close game. UConn hasn't really been playing well in the past few games. Against Houston, they started out slow. Against Tulsa, they started out slow. Today, they started out slow. So they really need to get out of that habit of not playing well to start the game and kind of playing sloppy. So I think it's going to be a battle for all 40 minutes. So I think it's going to end up being, let's say, UConn 83, South Carolina 79.
Wow. I don't know how to follow that. Well, I know the one thing that I asked Mariah Jefferson about last year while I was still at UConn was the motivation in terms of switching gears from a conference game to a ranked game. And she gave me the typical, when you play basketball, you just focus on your game and you play. But they told me a lot that when it comes to playing these ranked games against the South Carolinas, the Marylands, that there's an extra motivation in there. So they can afford to start slow because UConn's been a second and third quarter team all year. That's been the expectation for all 24 games that they play. But I don't think this is going to be a single-digit game. I think it'll be 11.
I had 11 points too. I think it'll be UConn 86 and South Carolina 75.
I'll split the difference. I think Gino keeps saying he wants his team to lose. He said it all the time last year. He said it before. He said it. I'm sure he said it after the game against SMU. But I don't think he's going to get his wish. I do think the Huskies win, and I think it is pretty comfortable. I'm going to go with an 8-point win. So I'm not going to make up a score, but I think it's going to be an 8-point win for the Huskies. Well, that's going to do it for us here. For Dan Connolly, Irina Nanka, Will Richardson, thank you guys all for joining. Enjoy the game tonight.